Hello, Penguins fans. Happy September 23rd, the official first full day of fall. And yeah, it surely felt like it where I am today. 70 degrees, nice winds, clear sunny skies. That is the kind of fall weather that I like. That's for damn sure. That is the perfect kind of weather day. And, it just shows we're 20 days away now from the NHL season taking place. A lot to get to for today's episode. I apologize for the last episode not posting until today. Guess Megaphone was weird and it just did not like I guess I thought I clicked post now, but I guess I still had it on the draft. That's never a mistake I've made. Well, not since I started the podcast, but that's apologies on that. For today, we're going to get to some of the players that spoke to the media, including Tristan Jarry with his injury, Bryan Rust, Evgeni Malkin, Mike Sullivan, Ron Hextall spoke to the media today. I'm going to get to what he said, and I'll give my thoughts on his first public comments in a little while, to say the least. We'll also get into the scrimmages and who looked good and all that jazz. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. My wonderful dog over here is deciding to scratch his collar. So if there's a little background noise, that is that. So Penguins training camp officially underway. We've had some scrimmages. We've had some goals from a lot of players. Drake Caggiula had a couple of goals in the first scrimmage. Josh Archibald also scored. I think Evgeni Malkin ripped a one-timer as well. There's been, it's been pretty fun so far to follow it and all that jazz. But, we do got to start yesterday when Tristan Jarry was speaking to the media for the first time since his injury. And he said, I don't ever want to, just so you all know, I don't ever want anyone to dump on him after what he just did. He said his broken foot that he played on, even if the Penguins had won that game against the New York Rangers, he said he wouldn't have been able to play game one against Carolina. That is how desperate the Penguins were in that game 7 against the Rangers. They had no choice but to play a probably 40 to 50% Tristan Jarry over Louis Domingue, who was that freaking bad against the Rangers. Again, even if they had won, he said he wouldn't have been available until at least the first half of the second round of the playoffs. That is just crazy to think about. He said the original plan, if the Penguins were going to advance, he said he was going to play a bit later on in the second round. Jarry played his tail off in that game. He said it took him quite a while to get over the injury. He said it sounded like the injury wasn't fully healed. He said until after the Stanley Cup final. So that's just crazy to think about. He said he even admitted that it took a lot longer to heal than originally expected. The fact that he played on it when it was clearly broken just shows the guts and the character that he has. Even though that, I'm sure he was just badly in pain. He said he couldn't even put a skate on after that for the next 2 months. He said it hurt that bad. So, kudos to him. He said he's fully healthy now and he's hoping to prove a lot of people wrong again this year. Also sounds like, according to Rob Rossi, he says there have been informal conversations between the Penguins and Brian Dumoulin, whose deal is up after the season, but no deal is imminent. For me, you all that have listened to this podcast for a long time know how I stand on that. But for the new people, I think it is wise for the Penguins to let the season play out and then, revisit negotiations for Brian Dumoulin. His skating has not been up to par last couple of years. His decision-making in the defensive zone has also not been that good, even offensively. It's gone even worse. And he's never really been that good of an offensive defenseman to begin with. But still, with where he's at age-wise, that he can go at any second. And the injuries have really caught out to him. I want to see what he can do this year with Chris Letang if he stays healthy before I go out and give him an extension. I feel the same about Tristan Jarry. I know Ron Hextall spoke about that today. He said they have had conversations, but nothing really major anything. I would see how he does this year as well. And then, revisit an extension, when the off season starts next June, July, something like that. So I'm fine with them, having some small conversations, but in terms of deals for these actual players, not a big fan of that at all. And we're starting to see some lines which are pretty cool. As Michelle Craquiolo, Pens Inside Scoop said, Mike Sullivan likes starting with tandems when it comes to constructing his forward lines. The main ones that the Penguins used, Crosby and Gensel, of course, Malkin and Rust, Carter, Kapanen, McGinn, and Bluger. So the one that's obviously going to raise some eyebrows is Malkin and Rust. That means, at least to me, that they are very much considering having Rakell on Crosby's right wing to start the year and having Rust on Malkin's right wing as well. And, Rust and Malkin, they've had really good numbers together. This was first tweeted out this morning by Jesse Marshall. I'm going to put it on here as well. Since 2019-20, they have spent 930 minutes together at 5v5. That's Rust and Malkin. Here are the underlying numbers. When they are on the ice together, the Penguins have 54% control of the shot attempts per 60, 57% control of the expected goals per game, 56% control of the scoring chances, and 58% of the actual goals scored. Those are very good numbers, and that goes to show that they are deadly together. So it's no wonder that Sullivan wants to try them out in camp in the preseason to see if that can stick in the regular season. But, we've also already, as I just showed you, it's proven to work during the regular season. And I think Sullivan really liked what he saw when Rakell was up with Crosby, last year for some short sample sizes. And I think he wants to go back to that. So, if you can have Gensel, Crosby, Rakell, Zucker, Malkin, Rust, if Zucker stays healthy, that's a really damn good top six. Put Danton Heinen on your third line. Obviously, with Carter and Kapanen, I think that's okay. And then with McGinn and Bluger, when both were on their game last year, they were both pretty decent until, obviously they had some cold streaks and injuries and all that. You can figure out who you want to play on, that left wing or right wing whenever, whether that's Ryan Poehling, whether that's Drew O'Connor, whether that's, Josh Archibald, Drake Caggiula, something like that. So, it looks like those are the main tandems that Mike Sullivan wants to see for a lot of this camp. And I'm excited about, we obviously know how good Gensel and Crosby are together. Carter, Kapanen, if Kapanen bounces back, I think that could be a decent pairing on the third line. We already know how good Malkin Rust is. And if McGinn can rediscover his first half form last year, I think he can put together a pretty solid, fourth line with Bluger. There were some fun, tidbits from the scrimmages and all that. It sounds like, that same Poulin was really moving around pretty well. Evgeni Malkin, it sounds like his legs are, fully back. Josh Yohe was writing that Chris Letang skated like the wind, according to him in his article. That is, nothing out of the ordinary with how awesome he is. It's also great that Valtteri Puustinen is also getting some top line minutes. I don't expect him to make the team out of camp. I don't really think any Penguins writer, analyst, podcaster like myself, anyone that covers the team is expecting him to make it out of camp. But, crazier things have happened. But if he can show that, he belongs in some preseason games, I definitely think he could be one of the top call-ups when the season starts, when the Penguins, and, they inevitably have some injuries. It sounds like, Poulin is playing center now. The big battle for that left-handed D spot for the third pairing, POJ, Ty Smith, that's really getting going, which is fun. It sounds like today, Ron Hextall was speaking about him. And, the thing that I noticed, when he spoke about him right here, he said, he spent enough time in the minors now where it's time to come up and show us what you can do at this level. And he's not wrong. He's really not wrong. He's been down in Wilkes-Barre ever since the Penguins acquired him a few years ago. It's now or never. You're on a one-way deal. There's 9 defensemen, plenty of players, would love to play over you, especially when you have that number 5, number 6 job. He's going to have to go out there and earn it. And if he does, good for him. He can maybe get a 15 to 20 game look at the NHL level And if he's not all that, he'll get scratched. But, it really is now or never at this point for him. If he's not able to make the team out of camp in that spot goes to Ty Smith, I really think, that, it could be the end of POJ in Pittsburgh. That wraps up this first segment. Went around the horn a little bit with who looked good in some of the scrimmages and, some of the comments that were made and all that jazz. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into some more of Ron Hextall's comments outside of that POJ one and, what I took away from them. But before I get to that, we have to get into BetOnline. It's your number one source for all football betting info. This season, you can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news and podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to BetOnline or to use your phone to learn more. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's get into some more comments here from Ron Hextall. He's asked about the blue line again on Friday because, of course, they have 9 defensemen. He even said, we have 90. They can't all play. So we do have some tough decisions. He says they have some ideas, but they aren't sure how it will all play out. He also went on to say that a trade is still possible over the next few weeks. He said that they have some ideas with how a trade could work and maybe sending a player down so they don't have to trade someone. But right now, he did say that all options are on the table and they are open to making a trade. Again, I feel like that's probably the most likely outcome. I think, if a depth player has to go, whether that's, Chad Riedel, POJ for a fringe pour, Mark Friedman, someone like that. They're definitely not going to move Dumoulin or Letang. They're not moving Pedersen or Petrie, and I don't think they're moving Jan Ruta. So it's going to be any one of the others that I did mention. But, obviously, again, there's something that's going to have to go there. You can send Ty Smith down just because he is waiver eligible. Excuse me. He is waiver eligible. He doesn't. I think I just screwed that up. He's waiver exempt, so he doesn't have to pass through waivers to be sent down to Wilkes-Barre. But on the other hand, someone like POJ, he would. Now, would someone claim him? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Maybe not. I would maybe lean towards no, just because, he's just kind of a fringe NHL defenseman at this point. I think a lot of teams have those kinds of types of players. Whatever, I think that's going to come to a head at some point. There's 20 days until the Penguins regular season starts. They still have time right now, to say the least. He was also asked about Ty Smith, Andrew O'Connor, and asked if they're at a disadvantage. And he said, no, we want to put the best team on the ice that we can on opening night. So if they are part of it and they have really good camps in preseason, we're going to try to find a way. So, that's basically his way of saying, if both Smith and O'Connor are really good to start to start in camp and in the preseason, they will find a way to have both of them on the team, whether that's trading out a defenseman, whether that's burying someone like Josh Archibald in the minors when he makes $900K, sending down Drake Caggiula because he's on a 2-way contract, et cetera, they will find a way. And again, I do think, those two players are very much on the microscope right now anyway, especially O'Connor. Had a really good start to the season last year. It looked like he definitely did belong in the NHL until I think that injury derailed him a little bit. So I am excited to see him at camp. It looks like so far he's at a decent start. It's only been 2 days, so you can only do, so much, I think, at this point. But, we'll have to see how he is in game action and all that stuff. Hextall also spoke about Evgeni Malkin, and he said, he just sounds like he's a hungry guy. Like, talked about the contract and stuff. He says he looks like a beast. They're all hungry to win and all that. And, that is something that's been a pretty prevailing comment from the core, these last 24 to 48 hours. They've said that these last couple of years have left a really sour taste in their mouths. It's no secret to me that the Penguins do feel that they should have won at least one of these last two opening round series. They probably should have won both, to be honest with you, especially the Rangers one. And I think, again, part of the reason why the manager was so comfortable bringing back a lot of the same team was because they feel like they've gotten unlucky. And I feel that way too. I think, if it weren't for, some really awful goaltending by Jari last year, and then this past year with Louis Domingue in the playoffs, the Penguins probably go at least to round 2, potentially to round 3, the Eastern Conference Final. And then, at that point, who knows? You're down to 4 teams overall, and then you have at least a 25% chance of bringing home Lord Stanley's Cup. So, it's definitely been a pretty big comment from the core. They've said, they still are hungry to win. We want to get over the hump and stop losing in the first round, yada, yada, yada. Usually players don't talk about last year at camp. They're kind of like, let's not talk about that. But, the Penguins, they definitely have. That series against the Rangers really pissed them off. Left a sour taste in their mouth because they know they outplayed them. And they're ready to go out there and prove people wrong this year, especially the core. Sid, it definitely seems like he's hungrier than ever right now. And, him and Letang and Malkin, they're entering their 17th season together. They know they don't have a lot of time left. So, they want to go out there and, give it their all. I think at this point. And Hextall also said, this is typical GM speak. He says, I'm really excited about where we are right now. That feeling around the room. He says there's going to be some good fights for jobs. Like, I really like where we're at. And of course, those fights for the jobs, the number 6 defensive spot, 12th forward, all that stuff. He didn't really talk about much else today. There wasn't really, too much else that Hextall was discussing a bit. But that wraps up this second segment. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to go into some miscellaneous thoughts from training camp. Again, who's looked good, who hasn't just yet. And remember, the Penguins, they play some preseason games this weekend. I'll tell you all about that as well coming up right after this commercial break. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So remember, the Penguins preseason schedule, they have a basically, I think like a cross, like a back-to-back on the same day. Half the team, I think, is going to play on the 1:00 game on Sunday, and the other half is going to play the 7:00 game. So the first game, this will be at PPG Paints Arena on Sunday afternoon, 1:00. No, the Pittsburgh Steelers do not play. Obviously, they just lost. For more on that, go check out Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers. He does an incredible job. I hope to have that sub count on YouTube and the listeners overall on all platforms one day that he has. He is an outstanding human, and he does a great job. And I'll say the same about Ethan with the Pirates, even though the Pirates are really bad this year. But again, Sunday, September 25th, 1 p.m. start time. That is the first Penguins preseason game. They have not given the lineup just yet. If I had to guess, it's probably going to come out, excuse me, sometime on Saturday. If I had to guess, maybe like during a scrimmage or something like that. And then they will play again against the Blue Jackets on Sunday night at 7:00 Eastern time. I'm not sure if those games will be broadcasted by AT&T Sports Network. The Penguins will probably just do a live stream, I would guess, on their official website. I think those are usually called by Josh Getzoff and Phil Bork, if I'm not mistaken. And then the one after that, they will play just a couple of days later. On September 27th, they will host the Detroit Red Wings at PPG Paints Arena. That is the 7:00 start time. I'm sure you can find the ticket info on the website and all that. But, some other miscellaneous thoughts. Sounds like Jeff Petrie was looking really comfortable. At least this was according to Josh Yohe. He said his skating was at a high level. Sounds like, his first pass was really good. He obviously has a booming shot. He's going to fit in just fine here. I have no, I have no worries about Petrie. I'm just excited for him to play. It also sounds like, Jason Zucker was playing with Radim Zohorna in today's scrimmage. Both of them found the net to put, Team White up for at the time 2-0. It is nice to see Zucker playing well in the scrimmages. He had a close to a scary injury incident. I think he kind of went down in a weird way, but was able to get back up and was just kind of smiling afterwards. But he said he's all good. No problem there. And, when he was speaking to the media, he said, I think he basically said that, he was kind of like just losing the love last year for the game just because of how, banged up he was, but, he said he was able to have a good summer. He's fully healthy now. And, he's been able to rediscover that love for the game again. And, that's all you can ask for, I think, at this point. He plays his tail off every shift. He's off to a good start at camp. And, for those that did not listen to my bold predictions yet, I have him scoring 20 to 25 this year. I think he's going to be a really good player for the Penguins. I think he's going to surprise a lot of the fan base. I'm really excited for him. That's for sure. I think when he's fully healthy, he brings an element to this team that, few players can, I think. I'm just trying to make sure I got everything here from the scrimmage today and all that stuff. Drake Caggiula was playing with Evgeni Malkin. Caggiula, he actually scored today. This is his second goal in 2 days. Evgeni Malkin also got a goal. It is nice seeing him make the most out of his time with both Bryan Rust and Evgeni Malkin. Probably will not get those kind of minutes during the regular season if he makes the team, but, nice seeing him score and playing well during camp. He was playing good last year in Buffalo. He's played well in Edmonton at times as well. So it's good to see him making the most out of it. Mike Sullivan even said it himself. He said, I think he's been really good so far. We thought we would try a speedy guy on that line who can bring some energy and tenacity on the puck and see what that might look like. And, so far we've really enjoyed it, to say the least. Casey DeSmith, he also spoke to the media. He said, he just feels terrible about the injury and all that. He said when he was making the save, he just felt his groin go. And he said, he just basically said, I knew I couldn't play after that. But, he says he's ready to come back better than ever. And, again, the Penguins are going to need that this year. They need DeSmith to spell Jarry at times. They cannot have a repeat of what happened last year where Jarry is making basically every start in the first half of the regular season. And then he's burnt out by like mid-March, early April, something like that, which obviously, I think the Anders Lee situation was just an accident mostly, but, he was probably a bit burnt out at that point anyway, too. So hopefully that he is able to play well with that. I think that wraps up today's episode about, the 22, 23 minute mark. So far, liked what I've seen from the highlights that I've watched from in camp. Kapanen spoke to the media a couple of times as well. I haven't really, heard much about him at camp yet, but, it's only really been 2 days. I think, I think it's important for him to have a good camp, especially after, the regular season that he just had. But, not too many, big declarations just yet. It's only really been 2 practices. There's been 2 scrimmages. Tomorrow, same thing. It'll start at 9:00. If anyone is going to the practices and everything, just let me know. Shoot me a DM, comment on the YouTube page. Let me know what you saw, who stood out, who didn't stand out to you, all that good stuff. I'll talk about that on the podcast, and obviously I'll take all your word for it. I wish I could get to training camp right now, but, got some stuff I got to take care of. That's for sure. That's the perks of not living in Pittsburgh, at least not yet. I'm still hoping to finalize a few things hoping maybe for a move in the next couple of months. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Again, that will wrap up today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening to this one. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. I'll go over the preseason games, who stood out to me, because I am going to try to watch those two, both of them. It's a chore to watch preseason hockey. I know that, but, duty calls there. I want to see who stands out, talk about the games, and, see who plays well in the scrimmage on Saturday, and all that stuff. But again, thank you all so much for listening to this one. I hope you all have a wonderful first full weekend of fall, and I'll talk with you all on Monday.